Hi, everyone, and welcome today. I'm really excited today because one of the individuals I want to bring to the discussion really captures some of the things I've been talking about, which is the intersection of domain and digital. And I have Vivek Saxena joining us today from the East Coast. Vivek actually is someone who embodies that entire idea. And so without further ado, I want to first introduce Vivek, and then we'll talk about the role of AI and the role of blockchain in the context of enterprise finance functions across the globe for large corporations. Before we step into any of that, though, first off, Vivek, welcome and thank you for being here.
Thank you, Sanjay.
And Vivek, look, it'd be great for our audience to get a sense for who you really are. And I'm going to ask you a few questions that really gets just quickly into your background. So first things first, Vivek, I know you spent a lot of time in enterprise finance, but where did you start and how did you get to where you are?
Okay, so I started with my education. I did my chartered accountancy from India. I did my CPA from US. Then I got lucky with Oracle Corporation, where I was trained as software engineer for nearly 5 years, Java, SQL, PL, and whatnot. So I got a good mix of domain and some early learning in around software coding and designing software applications.
So a chartered accountant or a chartered financial accountant with PL SQL experience, I don't think you can cut it any better than that for someone who's got domain and who's got digital. That's fantastic to be in conversation with you. I know, Vivek, I've often leaned upon you myself to help you think, help us think through where does digital intersect with the domain of enterprise finance, finance and accounting, report to report, order to cash, and really the entire element of actually managing risk down. And you've obviously thought through this and you've provided many inputs to us. And I want to pull up on a couple of areas that we spent time, at least in the past, talking through. And I'd love to catch up a little bit more on that. Before I jump into that, let me ask you one other question, because I think my audience always likes to get to know people. I've asked this question of other people before. What is a good book that you would recommend to everyone else? So I'm going to turn to you, Vivek, and I'm going to say, if you had to recommend a book or two, what would you tell our viewers as something you'd recommend?
So first book which I liked most was Outliers, because it gives the definition of domain expert, which was spending 10,000 hours in total in any subject to be called as a true expert. And since I lead the practice function, R&D function for the company, that's the benchmark. Then the second book came around, second and third are primarily the grit and range, right? One is about the kind of passion and commitment you need, or the sheer grit which you need to be successful. And third is how the skills in diverse roles, diverse expertise is also making a huge difference in anybody's career or whenever a new thinking or innovation is happening in that space. So those are the three books I read in sequence, and that's what I tell my colleagues and team members.
Those are all great books, and I'd recommend reading all three of them. But if I had to pick one, I'll give you my added filter on that. Grit is absolutely my top recommendation of those books. It's fantastic, and for all the reasons you said. And of course, some of us live and work here in Silicon Valley, so you kind of get to see and expect much of this, but I think what's captured in there is fantastic. So thank you again for being here. Listen, we're going to change gears, and I want to get into a little bit of the intersection of enterprise finance as a domain and digital as a capability. And at that intersection, I get a couple of questions that come up a lot. Blockchain, and then just as much AI. So let's pick AI first, right? And in the world of AI, I've heard you talk before to me about how you think about AI as a prediction machine. Talk to us a little bit about, first off, the role of AI in enterprise finance.
Okay, so there are 2 or 3 key areas where AI is truly making impact in finance and accounting. One is pure transactional finance, which is like how to make it invisible, which is like reducing cycle time or making it zero, right? Near zero cycle time by matching it, using machine learning to match it, right? And whether it is invoice matching, whether it is cash application, whether it is reconciliation, all these manual exceptions or the tasks which were taking huge time, right? I think that's where we have deployed at multiple places, and that's where huge success is coming. Now, the second story is truly a little advanced, and which has a link of how to make real-time close or on-demand close. So as we say, how to shorten your data to insights to action journey, what is important is to have the closing first, right? So far, for years, we have been doing closing as a month-end activity. Right now, SAP has started with predictive close modeling. Oracle has started talking about daily close. But to make it real time, right? What is needed? A huge shift in solving the three key problems which happens in accounting world. One is estimation, second is ensuring reliability, and third is ensuring disclosures. And for all these three, to make uh, truly on demand, what is needed is how to use AI kind of engine which can make the shift from month-end activity to event-based accounting, or period-based accounting to event-based accounting. And for that, you need a very good control tower, which is using AI engines to make it real.
So wait a minute, that was a lot. I just want to unpack that a little bit because I think you threw in some great ideas here for our audience, and certainly it's born by the experience you have in deploying this. It feels to me like what you were saying is the first stop on the journey is all of the exception management components of transactional finance and accounting, where traditionally you would deploy a large amount of resources on working out the exceptions, matching, reconciling, making complex association logic and approval logic. And artificial intelligence now gives us the ability to take a lot of that and then be able to do it automatically. And clearly that's, as you say, it's up and running, we use that. And you've seen that deployed successfully. It also sounded like your view is that closing books, which is an important function for any Fortune 500 company across the globe, and being able to be accurate and actually more importantly, fast, how fast you close your books is a large driver of your competitive performance. And I think what you're saying is that AI's prediction capability allows you to be able to close your books faster and more accurately. And in so doing, it allows those decision makers to make decisions much faster than the next companies on the block. And that speed of decision making, of innovation, is what drives success in the end. And so to that extent, I think sounds like that one's a good one. But I think what I loved about where you left the story is really the third area, which is, I think you're talking about the fact that finance is evolving of itself, and what used to be a periodic sort of frequency based, we're going to look at it once a year or every 6 months, etc. You're now able to do that much more dynamically, and you're able to do that much more in real time. And I think you said event based, etc. And that allows you to be able to react to external events much faster. And by doing that, aren't you fundamentally changing the composition of how finance gets done and how the company manages itself over the next few years? Is that am I getting this, or am I sort of putting more into it? What's your view?
No, that's the ask of the clients. That's the ask, that's the area where large tech companies are working. That's the area where we are designing on a process side or system of engagement layer, how to enable that journey. And of course, to make this real, there will be a lot of changes needed in the way accounting policies are defined, the way materiality and the thresholds are defined, and the whole estimation logic, right, to ensure that it can work on the new definition of materiality and thresholds and make it much more dynamic. And if all that is acceptable, ready, and has buy-in from the corporates and the leadership, I think that's the reality we need to all work with.
Fantastic. And is there one small example that quickly comes to mind that you can just bring to light for our viewers around how AI in the finance and accounting world for large corporations is really making a difference? Any one example?
So Sanjay, I think what we are doing with initial pilots and adoption of accrual engine, right, which is like taking feed or requests coming from diverse business users team, right, and reading that email or the attachment and coming up with what journal entry should be passed. I mean, that journal entry creation is also, I think I will say it's the last mile of closing process, which is actually speeding up the process of doing the hard work or the time or the most time consuming activity during close by machine. If that can be scaled up and becomes effective in all client scenarios, I think we will have a huge impact in the close efforts which is going on today.
That's fantastic. That's a great example how you're systematically taking work that necessarily happened outside of an ERP or outside of core systems that had to be done manually because it was complex, it was different, it was kind of edge cases, and actually capturing, and it was over email and other systems, and using AI, you're translating all of that into automated work that can be done reliably, predictably, accurately, and dynamically, which is fantastic. Let's change gears. I'm going to go away from AI because it's clear that you're very bullish, and obviously I've seen the successes you've had, which is fantastic. It has been fantastic to watch at a distance. I'm going to change gears a little bit and touch upon blockchain, another topic that I often talk about with industry thought leaders. There's a lot of sort of movement around blockchain is the next big thing. And if you aren't on it, you're missing something out. And there's a set of people that would say that, well, wait and watch, and and then get on at the right time. First off, what's your perspective on blockchain? What is it that it's really working? And then we'll come to your view of blockchain in enterprise finance.
I think where it is working are in the industries and the processes where there is a better business case. And of course, in addition to business case, there is a linkage to identifying authenticity or provenance or the complete life cycle of the traceability, right? In fact, so those three are key for FMCG company, right? To ensure, and for the drugs companies or healthcare companies, right? To ensure that drugs are real, right? And the food products which they are selling have the complete lineage. And the third, I will say the financial services, where the dollar value of the transaction fee, how to avoid, how to handle cross-border transactions, how to avoid the intermediaries for the stock, and many other things like Australian Stock Exchange is starting to go live in 2021 on a blockchain-based system. I think there's huge inefficiencies which have been created over the years because of for the same transaction being recorded at two or more places through an intermediary, and if that can be solved, there is a huge value. So when it comes to business, there is a good success story, and within the next 1 or 2 years, we will see this taking huge traction.
In fact, it is, isn't it? Because in financial services, as you said, the trust factor is a really important component there, and particularly with all the intermediaries, that financial services is benefiting a lot from it. I think you said FMCG, so the whole idea of provenance around the food that you eat, the drugs that you can consume, and that whole supply chain and sort of thinking through that. And then I think you also talked about track and trace, which of course comes into logistics and supply chain at large. And I think in all of those areas, whether it's regulatory, whether it's efficiency, whether it's business requirement in terms of customer stickiness, there's a clear business case for it. So then what about enterprise finance? Where are we sitting in enterprise finance with blockchain?
So when it comes to finance, I think as we see these business cases of certain industries being more successful using blockchain, some of the value of these transactions or the accounting reflection of those business transactions will come as a subledger feed directly from this thick protocol driven blockchain systems, right? Which will have business rule, master data, and the logic, right? If that starts coming to subledger, in some companies or industries we will see 2 to 5%, some companies it could be 10 to 20%, but that's the wave which will come in the subledger feed as a direct. And those many transactions will get posted, processed automatically without any manual exceptions or reconciliation need. And that's the way it will slowly move up and solve for that reducing the cost of trust.
And so is your advice that we should jump in with blockchain now? Should we wait and watch? How would you think about the timing of what we do here?
I think for the companies who are keen to invest large dollars in new greenfield project to upgrade all their systems, I think they should watch very closely the investments which are going in blockchain and the success stories coming. Because if subledger level transactions, right, are or can be fed using blockchain, then the current business case which we mostly see for these tech solution may not hold good in next 2 to 5 years time frame, because the value of subledger transaction, unless 100% of transactions are getting generated and processed in that subledger, will go down if some of the feed starts coming from blockchain ecosystem.
Wow, there's a lot you've said. I'm not sure I can summarize it, but I would say a few things. First off, Vivek Saxena, thank you for joining us today. What an amazing intersection of domain thinking and deep technology appreciation, innovation, knowledge, and it's just been a pleasure having you on this episode. If I had to summarize your perspective, I think you're very bullish on AI. You're deploying it out there. You're innovating with artificial intelligence. across enterprise finance and accounting applications, and a number of, you define 3 areas. In all of those areas, I think what I heard you say about blockchain is that high applicability in a few areas, little early for enterprise finance. Watch it carefully, particularly if you're going to go through a platform change. Think through the implications of a blockchain-based economy in the future and the implications that it has on the choices you make today around your platform change. But otherwise, wait and see how it's evolving and then jump in at the right time. Did I get that right?
Yes, Sanjay, 100%.
Thank you, Vivek, for joining us. Thank you to our viewers. We look forward to seeing you again next time.
Thanks, Sanjay.